if I ever get around to publishing my English book, it'll have lines that'll go a little something like this. But in the meantime, and yes, I do have every intention of writing it, but that's a book that's kind of like the Alekhine book. It was a passion project, but when you really, really love the lines that you're working on, it can take years. And I have in the past been like, yep, we're going to knock it out. And then I would hit a roadblock or see multiple ways to handle a given problem. And I'm still figuring it out. But in the meantime, I definitely will be having other courses come out on Chessable. And without further ado, let's get into this classical Dutch game that I played. And I started with a knight f3 move order, but of course, we get c4 quite quickly. And we've got our classical Dutch. And e6, f5 has been, say, the modern move order with playing the classical Dutch to avoid many anti-Dutch systems. I think Simon Williams is one of those players that made it popular to play move 1 e6 because he's a French player as well as a classical Dutch player. Well, I am going to quickly get to the main line. I am not avoiding the classical Dutch because it's never been an opening that I've been really intimidated by. So move 7, knight c3, and we have the typical structure or plan. Now, a5, queen e8, and knight e4. And typically a5 and queen e8 are going to have overlap with each other. So we'll first take a look at queen e8, because I feel like this is the classical main line. Knight e4 was played in the game against me. So queen e8, and I really like this move that isn't as popular with b4, just gaining space. And I think this kind of tells on, if you didn't play the flexible a5 move, we're going to go ahead and gain space. And after queen h5, this is a theme that we often see, say, in the Sicilian and the Grand Prix attack. It's this all or nothing attack on the king. And black wants to accomplish all these moves to just play for checkmate. So if you can trade queens, or if you can chop some of these pieces, there's not going to be an attack. We have more space. We have the advantage with white. So queen b3, this is already prophylaxis against, say, that e-pawn moving. So the c8 bishop can get an eye towards our position. So king h8, now c5, b5, getting a tempo on that knight, and bishop a3. And we're attacking fast enough here on the queen side, placing immediate pressure on black that they need to react. So after d5, like, okay, there's one less piece to attack with. Also, putting the question to the rook on f8. Why not? Rook e8. Now knight e5. And we don't have to worry about knight g4 because we can just simply go h3 here. So b6. We bring the queen back around. Oh, don't even need to play h3. There we go. e3. And black's in a knot. It's very difficult to see how he's going to uncoil. And in every endgame, we have the good bishop versus the bad bishop because the pawns in the center are stuck on the same color as our bishop, meaning they're permanent targets, whereas the opponent's bishop can only defend those pawns. Whereas our pawns on e3, f2, d4, the dark square pawns agree with our bishop, making our endgame even stronger. Very important thing to follow, and we're following a game from 2017. All right, so back to the main game. After knight c3, knight e4, and I feel like this move got more popular as Simon Williams played it, and I believe he recommended it in his Chessable course on the classical Dutch. So knight takes e4, f takes e4, knight d2, immediate pressure on the pawn, so black's got to change the structure. And f3 is the main line here, but I have always chosen personally the move e3 first. Not really sure why, just that's the habit that I developed. And after knight c6, black's looking to play in the center with e5, and we play f3 to blow it up. And now this is where the game, say, actually begins, where black needs to come up with a constructive plan, and it's not the easiest. White's position is relatively easy to just improve, whereas there's problems with the c8 bishop. Now, black in the main game tried bishop f6, but let's say, for instance, if b6, and this has been seen in the database a few times, we put the bishop on the only square it can go to, take in the center, and now we've got pressure on the c-file. I don't see a c5 break happening anytime soon. Queen c2, and b4. We've got a very clear plan of a4, b5, minority attack style, and we're freezing the structure on the queen side, and we have excellent pressure with the open c-file. There's no weaknesses really for black to bother in this position, and just pressure forever. So coming back to the main game with bishop f6, bishop d2. Same kind of themes. I'm looking to utilize the open c-file, so the opponent's shutting it down. But now that a stone wall structure is beginning to form, the same problem exists with that c8 bishop. It's going to need to zigzag to try to get into the game. So if we can put some pressure in the meantime on black, they're going to be playing one piece down. And when your opponent is lacking coordination, don't be making a lot of trades to help them get out of their bind. So bishop b4, a5. Hey, if you want to play b6 and weaken the structure further, you go right ahead. I always have the a3 square. So rook e8, and that makes me feel good because that rook is no longer on the open f-file. And here I should probably play a bit more critically than I did in the game with knight e5. And it's hard to make a move. For instance, if takes, knight f5, we have some liquidation. And the big problem here is black can't grab the pawn due to all the tactics. You lose the rook if queen takes d6. And in the event of you play some sort of waiting move here, rook takes c6 is very strong. Queen b3 was what I played in the main game. Just, again, sticking to the plan of I don't want that c8 bishop to move, and I want to keep black in a bad spot. So knight f5 was played. Like, okay. I have no reason to hurry, and I'm just freezing the pawn structure and making sure that my bishop is always going to be safe on a3. So b6. And this is definitely a blunder, but black's position is getting to the point of being untenable just because of the lack of coordination. I take with tempo on the queen, and I think my opponent just missed c5. So this is the next phase of the game, and this is something that my students, all the way up to my students rated 2000, the technique of winning the one game, putting someone away when you're better. I'm seeing mistakes with all of them, with this kind of issue. And I think that's why we have the expression, there's nothing more difficult in chess than winning the one game. So, limiting counterplay and asking that question after each move, especially in long time controls. What did my opponent's last move do? Can we stop a plan? What are my goals? In this case, we need to simplify the win. And don't just think trade at all cost. We want to make good trades still. Like, which is our good bishop, which is our bad bishop? If you said the light square bishop is our good bishop, yes. You said the b6 bishop is our bad bishop, yes. If you said our bad bishop is because it can't move a lot of squares on b6, you're wrong. The dark square bishop is the bad bishop because it's stuck on the majority of pawns in the center. So keep in mind, that's activity versus in-game dynamics. That's a definition I very often find getting messed up by chess players studying middle game text because it's not explained very clearly. So bishop a6, bothering the rook. Like, okay, I wanted to lift the rook anyway. We have more flexibility. Queen c8. Now queen c3, and this is a multi-purpose move. One, I'm getting the queen off the pin, giving me more flexibility. Two, I'm keeping an eye on e5, slowing down the potential break. Three, I'm keeping another eye on the a-pawn because very likely when this a-pawn falls, this pawn is going to be a winner for us in every endgame. So bishop d8. This goes along with our goals. But when you see a good move, look for a better one. So, what is best here? This is kind of a Karpovian thought process. The most dangerous piece and closest piece to our king is that knight on f5. And this is a little bit of an awkward situation for that knight. So let's ask him, where does he want to go? So after takes, still got to worry about the knight. And there's a pawn. We've got a passer on the b file. The c pawn's weak. Everything's looking good. Oh, no. He's trying to ruin it for us. Whatever should we do? So how do you evaluate? We've gotten a pawn. We've got two connected passers on the A and B file-ish. We got space on the king side, and we got the better bishop. Is it worth sacrificing the rook for the knight on c4? Absolutely. And after bishop takes, knight e5, a power knight that cannot be kicked out for the rest of the game. Oh, you want to trade? Absolutely, sir. And the only thing impeding the progress of my pawns is that light square bishop. I'm like, okay. So let's go ahead and go knight takes c6 because tempo the rook. And a move like rook c8 ends in disaster because of the fork. Abba. Fork. So rook takes f2. All right, you checking me. And a lot of players would get nervous in this type of position because it feels good to have a heavy, a queen or a rook in the position. But me, I'm like, those pawns are really far. The knight's really annoying. Passed pawns must be pushed. The only thing impeding my progress is the bishop. Please go away. Check. And calculate. b7 doesn't quite work, so we'll check first. a6, b7, and it queens by force. So the sack was good, and focusing too much on material can be a bad thing for you. Classical Dutch, one of the main lines for white and how to play the position. Not too hard. Hopefully you enjoyed it.